On the morning of September 11, 2001, terrorists carried out the world's deadliest terror attack. Two flights from Boston to LA were hijacked and crashed into the north and south towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. Within the next 2 hours, the towers collapsed. At 9:37, American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. At 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashed into a field in Pennsylvania after passengers tried to overpower the hijackers. Nearly 3,000 people from 92 nations lost their lives that morning. The attacks were carried out by the Islamic terrorist group Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden. The FBI quickly identified the 19 terrorists from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Lebanon. The terrorists were able to enter the US on tourist, business, and student visas. Bin Laden had previously declared war and called for jihad against the US and its allies because of their presence in the Middle East, their support of Israel, and their military involvement in Iraq. Al-Qaeda didn't have the capacity to fight the US military, so they decided to attack targets that symbolize America's power. On October 7th, the US military began its military action in Afghanistan against Al-Qaeda and Taliban targets. The war on terror has begun. In 2003, the US launched its controversial invasion of Iraq. The war on terror has had some successes, including, in my view, the killing of Osama bin Laden and the disruption of Al-Qaeda's leadership, the temporary overthrow of the Taliban government, and the prevention of further major attacks in the US. The US military officially ended its war in Iraq in 2011, while the presence of the US military in Afghanistan lasted 20 years and ended with its withdrawal in August 2021. This makes the war in Afghanistan the longest war in American history. Looking back from today's perspective, I consider the war on terror a failure. The main reasons are the many civilian casualties as well as the persistence of Islamic terrorism, leaving the Middle East more unstable than it was before 9/11. The Taliban regained control of Afghanistan within weeks of the withdrawal of US troops. This led to restrictions on women's rights, such as attending school, universities, or work, as well as restrictions on press freedom. The Taliban also cracked down on demonstrations and resumed public executions. The lack of Western soldiers in Afghanistan, combined with the Taliban's comeback, has undoubtedly benefited Al-Qaeda. While US intelligence officers claim that Al-Qaeda hasn't set up a new base in Afghanistan, a UN report warns that the group is growing and has around 30 to 60 top members and 400 fighters in the country. Islamic terrorism still poses a threat to the Middle East and the West. In northeastern Syria, around 65,000 terrorists and their relatives are still held in camps due to the emergence and decline of the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. This heightens the risk of additional radicalization and retaliation. 9/11 left a massive impact on the US civil aviation industry. In the following months, domestic passenger travel within the US plummeted by roughly 31%. US airlines incurred losses amounting to $8 billion during 2001. Until 2006, the US aviation industry was unprofitable, with overall losses around $60 billion. Prior to 9/11, 9 airlines held a market share of 80%. However, due to bankruptcies and mergers and acquisitions, the four largest airlines now control around 67%. In response to 9/11, the TSA was established as a part of the Department of Homeland Security, which assumed full responsibility for aviation security. Since 9/11, the US has invested more than $100 billion in aviation security measures. This can also be seen by the immense increase of the spending of the Department of Homeland Security. 9/11 hurt the economy and caused job loss. Unemployment rose by 1.5% from the beginning to the end of the year. with an estimated 600,000 jobs lost as a direct result of the attacks. Of those, 226,000 were in the travel and tourism industry. The stock market serves as another indicator of the devastating effects caused by 9/11. On the first day of trading, the Dow Jones experienced a 7.1% decrease, which marked the highest one-day decline in the index history. Within a week, shares of American Airlines and United Airlines plummeted by 40%. Fighting wars and terrorism has led to a significant increase in military spending. In 2000, the US spent 320 billion. In 2022, it spent over 876 billion, an increase of 274%. The per capita military spending for 2021 amounted to over 2,100 US dollars. 9/11 has permanently altered the landscape of air travel, for the most part positively. Flying now is safer than ever before, yet passengers are experiencing less privacy and more security checks than before to rebuild the trust of a nation shattered by 9/11. The attempt for peace and democracy in the Middle East has failed. Ending its war in Iraq and Afghanistan was the right decision. However, the Taliban was underestimated by America. The result was a significant loss of life and billions of dollars spent, only for the Taliban to be stronger than ever and a potential resurgence of Al-Qaeda. The US appears to have learned from 9/11. Despite its global military power, it seems that the war on terror has made the US more careful when facing direct military confrontation overseas. However, the duration of this newfound caution remains uncertain.